Okay, YouTube, this should be a pretty fun episode. Today we're going to get into JavaScript and how it will be used to control this web page and to actually make our pieces move onto the board. Exciting stuff for geeks like us. Down here I have four test controls that I placed on my web page. These will not be in the final game, hopefully. My plan in the final game is just be able to have people be able to grab a piece from on the side here, drag it into place, drop it with their mouse, and then it will take its place on the game and in the game. But in order to make that happen, I need behind the scenes functions that work with just text. And then the mouse movements will be translated into text, and then the functions will do what they're supposed to do. For example, if I wanted to place an O, I have here a button that says click for O, but I also need to type in a value for where I want the O to be placed. It needs to be a number between 1 and 9, being 1 over here, 9 down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You get the idea. So I got a 3, click an O, I respond with my 3. I'll show you what that code is doing later. And there's my O, nicely in slot 3. Likewise, I can do a 2, place an X, I see my 2, I say okay, I get my X. That's great stuff. That's really good stuff. It took me a while, even though the experience I have, I had to look up the exact wording, and every single character has to be correct when you're dealing with computers. So let's get into it. These types of controls on a web page come from a tag called input, and you can specify different types for an input tag. This one over here has a type of button, and this one over here has a type of text. These codes are in a separate file called GameRunnerClient.js because it runs the game, and we're on the client side. This is not the server side files. So I differentiate all that in the way I name the file. And I give it a JS extension, which is short for JavaScript. Now, how does this get linked into my Tic Tac Toe web page over here? Well, it's very simple. You put in script tags, and then you put in a source element. Source equals GameRunnerClient.js. Bingo bango. Now any functions, any code that's over here is available to be called by elements on this web page, and likewise any elements or tags that are in this web page can be found and then manipulated by the JavaScript code. So it's a kind of a two-way linking. This is the code inside of the HTML page or the actual visible web page where the buttons and the text box controls are. As I said, these are input controls, and you see here the type button and the type text. So this is what creates a place where you can type in a number, kind of right here. And this is what creates a button that you can click on. And what makes something happen when you click on it? Well, you must enter an on-click event, or you must use a library that like grabs every single element on the page and makes them all clickable. Here I'm going the old school plain vanilla way, and I'm using an on-click equals. On-click equals quote, place O, and with the parentheses means there's no parameters. It's just empty. All I'm doing is telling it to go. So it doesn't get the number that it needs from here, although I could have structured it that way, kind of. But then you would have to edit the code every time you wanted to change what place that a piece goes to, which is not something you, of course, would ask a user to do. So instead of putting a number in here, I just tell it to run, and then inside of the function itself, it's going to find this text box, and it's going to find out what somebody typed into that text box. Let's see how that works. So place O is called, which means to run it, means to execute it. It's just a term you got to get used to. Basically, it gives execution over to this function. So the code comes in here, starts to execute the very first line. And what does it do? It looks for an element on the web page that is named O slot. And then it grabs the value in O slot and it stores it in a new variable, which isn't really on the page at all, which I created called slot. So let is a function in JavaScript built into it that creates variables. And usually you give that variable a value right away, as I did here. But this O slot is an ID that is right here. See, O slot links this control where people type in the number to this line, which grabs the number and stores it in a variable to be used later. Right away, I pop up that alert box. That's what causes what you were seeing there. So when I type in a 2, that gets stored in slot, and then an alert box gives the message of what is slot. Very cool. Next, I have an array of objects here which are names of the controls on the page. They also have their IDs. So I'm using the same function, get element by ID, but in this case I take the number and I look up a particular control that I'm interested in. Hopefully I will find it. If it's not a number between 1 and 9, I would not find it and the function would fail. So if someone would type in a letter or a number greater than 9 or a number lesser than 9, then I wouldn't find a name for controls up here, and this thing would error out and basically do nothing. If I do find a number though, I'm going to change the source property of that slot on the game board. The source property dictates the graphic that is used in that image. So I change it to X big P and G if I'm placing an X, or I change it to O big P and G if I'm placing an O. And it is that simple, yet it is that complicated, folks. You saw that it works, and let's do it one more time. As I show you how it works, let's just demonstrate the difference when I pop up the alert box and when I don't pop up the alert box. So I'm going to get rid of the alert thing because it's only for testing. When I do an O, it's not going to alert because I just removed that line of code. When I do an X, it will alert because I did not remove the alert box. So let's refresh that and try it out. O6, it's just gonna, see, it just placed it without popping up the alert box. Here, 7, I get the alert box and then I get the placement. Bam. Alright, that's plenty for this video. I know that's advanced stuff, but sometimes it's better to see it like actually working than to talk too much in the weeds about just, oh, this is a function, this is how you declare a variable, blah, 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 blah. We're making tic-tac-toe, folks. Stick with me.